All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 426, I think, of the Restore and Report podcast. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family, trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. According to God's design, my name is Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week, on Thursday and Sunday to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal. And today we're going to be reviewing a video by the Gottman Institute, which is founded by John Gottman. I'll go through his bio with you in a second. I'm recording this video for you on a very nasty Saturday afternoon, and it is my entire town and surrounding area has been buried in 2 inches of ice for, golly, like 8 days, 9 days, something like that. It is a crazy, weird storm. I have not been to work in the past week, so I've had a lot of time to do other stuff, which I am not complaining about at all. But yeah, that's the kind of the setting of this episode. And we're going to be reviewing a discussion today on how to handle car fights. Okay. And this is something that I actually have not talked about on this show before, which is why I wanted to do it. One of the reasons. And couples, a lot of times, and maybe if you are a couple, then you're going to be able to relate to this really easily. But couples, a lot of times, will have a disagreement, a dispute, some kind of conflict, argument in the car on their way to some party or church or location. And upon arriving at that location, find themselves in a very awkward position because the crisis has not been resolved. And now it is your only option seems to be like to get out of the car and to socialize and pretend like everything is normal and be again on the same, well, hopefully you never were not on the same team with your spouse, but make sure that everything is okay with your spouse. Even though 5 minutes before there seemingly things were not okay. And that kind of presents this conundrum that married people can find themselves in. And as I said, the source for today's episode is going to be John Gottman. He's an American psychologist and professor. I've got his little Google bio up here for you on screen. He's 83 years old. He was born April 26th of 1942. His spouse is Julie Gottman. They run the Gottman Institute together as a team. He is a clinical psychologist and professor emeritus at the University of Washington. He has written, like, I don't know how many books, like 10, probably way more than that. I mean, I'm seeing books as far back as 1979 through 2012, 94, 2011, 2016. This guy writes a marriage book like almost every year, pretty much. One of the world's leading authorities on marriage and marriage conflict. And so I'm really excited to review this for you. I think he's Jewish. A couple of rules that you might have heard of. His 2-2-2-2 rule, his 4 toxic elements of Gottman's research, his 4 indicators of divorce, which a couple episodes ago I talked about. This is the guy that I talked about who claims that, I think it was with 91% accuracy, he can observe a couple's conversation and within a few minutes determine whether or not they will get divorced. That's what he's famous for, this guy, making that claim. And I think he's pretty much backed that claim up by, at least as far as that claim can be backed up, he's predicted quite a few marriage outcomes just by observing couples. And so really, really interesting here. And if you're curious about those things, by the way, if he sees criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, and approaching, I think one of the other ones that he talked, that's what he calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for that marriage, which is a pretty drastic term. But I believe he also has talked about, coming aggressively into an argument, at the start without any, provocation or even reason for that. That's another red flag that your marriage is headed for divorce. And so these behaviors he has observed are not good behaviors you want if you want your marriage to go the distance. But moving on, let's see what his wife, in this video, we're going to review 2 videos today. If my voice holds out, my voice has been awful for the past couple weeks or so. I've had some kind of cold or sickness or something. I don't know what it is, but so if I start, coughing like crazy, then I'll obviously have to wrap up the episode early, but hopefully I'll be able to make it through, and we're going to review 2 videos. The first one is on how to handle a car fight. So without further ado, let's hear what Julie Gottman has to say, the advice she gives to couples who need to handle a car fight, and solve a problem that they've encountered on their commute to some kind of destination.
Can we talk about car fights?
Sure. For some reason, I don't know why this happens, but people together, partners together, driving down the freeway at 70 to 80 miles an hour, or if you live in California, maybe 90 miles an hour, somehow always get into fights. So,
And she's, and I think my theory for this, that's definitely true. Car fights are a thing, and this is true for families. This is true for marriages. And you might wonder, like, what is it about the car that makes everybody want to fight? And what it is, I think, is that there's an issue that happened before people got in the car, and they are now forced into close proximity with one another, and their ability to retreat and withdraw from another has been removed. And so conflict is unavoidable at that point. That's my theory, because like when you're in a house or when you're outside or when you're at home or even in a public space, you can always retreat and withdraw from the person that is causing you grief. But when you're in a car, you cannot. You're stuck. And so when you're stuck together for that, depending on how long your commute is, for that set amount of time, things are going to come to the surface that were otherwise being pushed to the back burner because you were withdrawing from one another and taking space, which I think taking space can be a fine thing, but we're going to talk about, the scripture's advice on this and how Ephesians talks about not letting the sun go down on your anger. Basically just not literally meaning, I think it's great literal advice too, but I think the point behind that verse is not that you shouldn't be angry at nighttime, but rather you shouldn't postpone reconciliation, and you shouldn't ever, ever, ever make conflict last longer than it has to. And that you should minimize the amount of time that anger is an emotion you're experiencing with your partner and people you care about and love. And so, and that elongating that is what leads to that resentment and contempt, and embitterment that John Gottman says is a huge predictor of divorce. And so I just would encourage you guys, solve problems immediately as soon as they happen. Do not put them off and let them affect your day, your connection with your spouse, your kids, your family, whatever, etc., for any amount of time at all. Like I'm a huge advocate of like immediate dissolution of the problem. Like as soon as you've identified the problem, the next step needs to be solving it. It doesn't need to be like taking time away from each other and all that. Like I don't think that usually is generally a good idea. And I know that maybe sometimes that's necessary in certain very rare circumstances, but I think that most of the time, once you've diagnosed a problem, you should immediately begin fixing it. And just to give you some scripture for this, let's go ahead and flip to Ephesians 4, verse 26. Be angry and yet do not sin. Be angry and yet do not sin. So saying basically that anger might be necessary and essential, but that sin should not accompany it. And I think that's a great thing marriages need to know. You can be angry with your partner, or I think a better way of saying it is you can be angry at being disconnected from your partner and that things are making it difficult for you to connect with one another, but you cannot treat your partner disrespectfully or in an unloving way just because you are angry. It says, again, back to scripture, verse 26, be angry and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity. This is huge. This is huge. Do not give the devil an opportunity. So many battles are solved not by fighting to the death and not by fighting a bloody conflict, but by simply creating preventative measures that prevent the conflict from ever becoming necessary. That is so true. This is true on the sexual front. Paul talks about not depriving one another so that your defenses are up and the devil, or the enemy, I should say, does not capitalize on your weakness. And this, so much of scripture is just pretty much solving problems before they happen. And that is such profound wisdom that is true in this situation as well. Like, I'll tell you, if you don't want to have car fights, one of the best things you can do is immediately solve problems that arise at home. So if you've got a problem that pops up at home, and like, I know there are different personalities in this. I know people personally who say, I just need a moment. I need some space. I need whatever, some time, or sometimes they'll explicitly say, I need some time away from you, that kind of stuff. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I don't like that language. And I don't think that leads to the best outcome when it comes to being on the same team. I think that actually gets in the way. You need to solve problems immediately upon identification. And, I'm totally fine that some people don't have that personality, but what would, I think, be harmful to their relationships is if they use that personality as a license to do whatever they wanted. And like, I don't have a conflict, healthy personality. I don't like conflict. I don't like solving conflict. I would just postpone conflict. But if I instead of solving problems as they arose, postponed them, and they piled up and festered and embitterment began to arise, that's a character flaw. That's not something that I can excuse by saying I have a personality that's not in alignment with Scripture here. Like, you fix your personality, you don't change Scripture. You fix your personality, truth doesn't change at all, okay? And so I would just encourage you, like, solve problems as they go. Ephesians 26, don't let the sun go down in your anger. Don't postpone reconciliation. Don't postpone forgiveness. Don't postpone, what's the word? Coming together again, for lack of a better term. Like, fix the problem. Get the problem out of the way, and do it with a ferocious intentionality. As soon as you figure it out, you need to be in identification detective mode once you realize something is off. When you get that sixth sense that something is off with your connection with your partner, you need to immediately be trying to figure out what the problem is. And upon discovering that problem, you need to massacre that problem with a furious intentionality, and not let it create any more problems, because that's how you end up with car fights. So my first tip for you in handling car fights is, we're going to get to kind of how bad they are later down the road. I'll give you some personal stories and stuff like that, but car fights can often just be prevented by solving problems immediately instead of postponing them, and then being in a situation where you're forced to be, where your ability to take space is taken away, and you're now in a cage with the person you're having an issue with. And so, yeah, definitely I would be a huge proponent of solving problems immediately, not postponing them. Let's go back to what Julie Gottman, she probably has her doctorate, I don't know, has to say on this issue.
What do you do about that? It's such a strange phenomenon, but I know a million people who this has happened to, including yours truly. So, what do you do? Well, we have a little booklet at the Gottman Institute called The Aftermath of a Regrettable Incident. Now, you would think, yep, a fight is a regrettable incident. So, keep it in your glove compartment. That's why we make it so small, so it'll fit in there. And if you have a fight and it's a bad fight, slow down, pull over, stop, pull out The Aftermath of a Regrettable Incident booklet. How do you talk about it and get over it? Go through the exercise that it reveals, and you'll probably feel better, get back on the freeway, keep going.
I think that is profoundly good advice. Profoundly. What did she say? She said, don't wait to get to your destination to try to solve the problem. Don't wait to solve the problem any longer than you have to. Once you've identified it, it should be killed by both parties, okay? So that you can feel, I should say, that your connection is unimpeded. Because your connection, obviously, I would argue your connections, if you've decided to have the kind of marriage that can't end in divorce, your connection is kind of untouchable, and you're not going to ever leave one another or abandon one another anyway. But you need to feel like you're on the same team with your partner, and that the way to do that is to get rid of any problem in the way of that. And so, just to give you a practical story, I don't even remember the problem that Lainey and I had this past Christmas. The argument, it wasn't even an argument. I've just totally forgotten. Somehow we both made each other feel bothered or disconnected. I don't remember what the issue was. I remember loading the presents in the car to go to Christmas family celebrations and having a profound dissatisfaction and discontentment and anger in my heart about something that had happened between me and Lainey. And I I don't I don't really remember what the issue was. The issue was not really relevant. But I just remember thinking, man, here we are going to celebrate Christmas, and like I am totally not, I'm totally not living in the spirit of Christmas right now, and I don't know what the problem is between what happened. I don't remember. I remember being so frustrated about what happened. Um, and I'm not blaming either Lainey or myself solely because I don't remember exactly what happened, but all I knew was I didn't feel like we were on the same team, even though we obviously always are. I didn't feel like it. And so I'm loading presents, which is my first mistake. I should have solved the problem immediately upon realizing what it was. Because at the time I knew, I think. But now I've just forgotten because it's been so long ago, and I don't hold a grudge. I just kind of, you know, you just move on, and that means the problem was really solved instead of still festering there. But anyway, I should have immediately solved the problem instead of loading presents in the car. But then one thing led to another. And this is what happens. This is the procrastination thing. When you procrastinate solving problems, it gets worse and worse and worse until the dragon becomes so big, it's harder to solve than it would have been when it was just a fledgling. Jordan Peterson has a great line where he says, "Kill the dragon in his lair before he comes to your village." Think about that. Kill the dragon in his lair before he comes to your village. This is so true. Address your problems before they address you, because by golly, they are going to address you. They are going to address you. You will pay the piper. They are coming for you if you don't go for them. And so problems are things that murder you if you don't murder them. And so I'm using really violent language here because I think that's language that's necessary when you're talking about something that's impeding your connection with your partner. You need to massacre and destroy anything that is in the way of you and your partner, because the consequences of not doing so, when that dragon comes and attacks your village and you find yourself signing divorce papers and blowing up your children's life and your spouse's life because that dragon was unaddressed as a young dragon, is really severe. Okay. And so that's why I'm using dramatic language here. I think this is actually a case for using dramatic language, a case where it's necessary. But anyway, I didn't. I just loaded the presents in the car. I loaded the suitcases in the car. I finished packing, loaded all our stuff, got in the car, and I wasn't saying anything to her. I wasn't talking to her, and that was my issue. And then I finally ended up making the right decision. Here's how it happened. We're driving. We're on the way. I remember thinking as soon as I started pulling out, here we are. We're headed to a Christmas celebration. We're about to get to this Christmas celebration, and we're bothered with each other. We're upset with each other. And we're going to arrive at our destination, our Christmas celebration, and that problem's still going to be there. And then there are going to be a bunch of people around. And so it's going to be a million times harder to solve this problem because we don't have that privacy anymore. And so I just remember thinking, I am not going to celebrate Christmas, and I'm not going to allow us to spend, an elongated period of time upset and frustrated. We have to find a way to solve this before we get to our destination. So within the next 5 miles or 8 miles or whatever it was, we were going to her parents, I think. It might have been my parents. We were going to both. Actually, we were going to her parents, then my parents. I just remember thinking, so in the next 10 minutes, I've got to figure out a way to solve this. And I just remember thinking and thinking and thinking as I drove. Of course, I'm not saying anything, but then I remember thinking, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm going to do to fix this. I'm going to, and of course, this car is dead silent. Like, we are not talking about it because we're both bothered. We're both upset about something that happened. Again, I don't remember what happened, or I would tell you because I'm super honest, but I honestly have forgotten. But, and that is not like us. Like, we talk all the time and laugh and joke and cuddle all the time. So if we're silent, something's wrong. And I knew that. But, because I had postponed it to this point, I was now on a timer, because once we get to the event, and you parents you know what I'm talking about here. Like, you guys and you spouses, you know what I'm talking about. Like, when there's a problem and you're in the car and there's that fight or that disagreement or that silent treatment, whatever the problem is, there's a disconnection. That's the problem. If you don't fix that before you get to your location, everything's going to suffer. And the amount of time you've spent sad is now elongated. And why would you ever want that? The amount of time you are now spending angry at the person that you're closest to in the world, that God has given you to love on the most, is now elongated, and so it's just not a good way to live. So what I decided, and I would recommend this, guys. I would recommend this, guys, for you who are trying to solve car fights. Is I remember thinking, okay, when we get to Mamre Baptist Church on the way to her parents, I'm gonna pull over. I am not going past Mamre Baptist Church until this problem is solved. Okay, and so we're driving. I'm still trying to be aware of any opportunity the Holy Spirit provides for reconciliation before that, but I am determined in my heart that we are not going past this line until this problem is resolved. We are not going any further feeling these feelings of disconnection with one another than this point. And so I decided I'm just going to pull over. And that's exactly what Julie Gottman just said. And I think that is profoundly good marriage advice. Like, so I pulled over. I got to Mamre and I hadn't found an opportunity to fix the problem before then. So I pulled over at Mamre and I just stopped the car, put it in park. And then I can't remember if I had planned out what I was going to say before or if I just came up with it and the Lord spoon fed me the words in the moment. But I remember saying, like, I started off with an apology, like acknowledging what I did wrong and pretty much saying, like, we have to be on the same team and I don't want to ruin your holiday and just make us not feel good about our connection with one another going into Christmas and all that. And my wife is just incredibly, like, amazing at what's the word? Like turning toward me constantly and never turning away from me. Like she was totally receptive to everything I was saying. She, was in tears, like totally contrite and repentant for anything she did wrong. And boom, restoration was just restored. Forgiveness was just abundant. And she was claiming there was nothing to forgive anyway. And I don't know. It was just really, the point was we just didn't allow it to go any further. Like that, you have to make that decision of, like, I don't know if it's like a pride thing where you don't want to apologize or you don't want to, it's just hard to break the silence, but you've got to solve the problem quick. You can't let it get worse. Okay. I think that's great advice from Julie Gottman. Like, pull over, literally pull over. Don't get to where you're going, because then guess what? Yeah, you're getting out of the car and you're still not feeling like you're on the same team. And then you go through the whole event feeling like you're not on the same team. And that's just not a recipe for a great marriage. So very, very good what she just said there.
What if I'm flooded while I'm in the car with my partner and we're having an argument, but we don't have time to pull over? How do we both get unflooded while we're still driving?
Okay, so if one of you or both of you gets flooded while you were driving and you don't have time to pull over, what do? Well, here's a good method. Turn on the radio or put on some music maybe and stop talking. Take a break. So basically what you're doing is you're taking a break from the interaction in order to soothe yourself and calm down. The way you can do that is distraction, and putting on some music or putting on a talk show, something, will distract you from the content of the fight you're having with your partner and help your body then to metabolize all those stress hormones that flooding releases into your system. You need to do that for at least 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes even. Then you can return to the conversation.
Okay, I like that advice here, but I also think it can be unnecessary if you do things the scriptural way. So let's look at some scriptural evidence to back up what she just said. 1 Samuel 16 is talking about how the music of David ministered to Saul and provided relief from the evil spirits that were tormenting him. Okay. Let's start with verse 21. Then David came to Saul and attended him, and Saul greatly loved him, and he became his armor bearer. So Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, "Let David now be my attendant, for he has found favor in my sight." So it came about, Whenever the evil spirit from God came to Saul, David would take the harp and play it with his hand, and Saul would feel relieved and become well, and the evil spirit would leave him. Really profound. Talk about the effect that music can have, that pleasant sounds can have for your inner struggles, your internal world struggles. Okay, really, really good. So I do think that music is a good idea. So I'm not undermining what she just said. Like radio, break, pause conversation, play some music, whatever. That's awesome. But I think that's totally unnecessary if you've taken the advice of Ephesians 4 in the situation before that, directly before that, because she mentioned the word flood. Did you hear her say the word flood? She said, if your partner or you find yourself flooded with, information or anger or, expression of displeasure on your partner's end about how you handled a situation or something, and you had no idea it was coming, then I would say a couple things that went wrong in the situation before you got in the car is A, you probably, let's say you're the one getting yelled at here, or an expression of displeasure is being, you're being bombarded with it from your partner. In the situation before, you probably were not behaving in such a way that is thoughtful of your partner's feelings. Okay, so in some capacity, your partner doesn't just go off the rails. Something made them very sad or frustrated or bothered. Okay, and they're perceiving that to be you in some way. So reflect on that situation, think about what you could have done different, apologize for it. Okay. Number two, your partner, what your partner's probably doing wrong there, or maybe you're this person, is a flood is the result of a feelings being dammed up. Okay. Feelings being held back, feelings being festered upon. Okay, so if there's an anger in your heart, or if there's sadness or frustration in your heart, and it's flooding out, it's because there was some pressure building up because you were not addressing the problem immediately. You were not solving the problem immediately. Instead, you were letting the sun go down in your anger, and you were letting the dragon remain unaddressed and the problem remain unsolved for time after time after time after time until boom, it all comes out at once. Okay. And maybe you just didn't want it, maybe your partner or you just didn't want to handle that, conflict in person because there were people around. But I think a great thing to do, maybe if instead of postponing it, is maybe send your partner a text, hey, can I talk to you in the other room for a second, or something like that. Instead of festering for that whole gathering, that whole assembly, and then blowing up at your partner in the car because, you were just angry the entire meeting, which is also going to affect, the gathering, the fellowship, the community in general. Just handle the problem as soon as you see it. You don't have to address it in front of everybody. I don't think that's a good idea either, because I think you should always be on the same team. And so you don't want to present yourself as somebody who's not on your partner's team in front of the world. Okay. You want to be a bastion of unity at all times. Okay. So that means if your partner does something that bothers you, you don't call them out for it in front of the world. Maybe you just step into a room, a closet somewhere. I don't care if a bathroom, a family bathroom. Wherever you can get some space, just step outside for a second and talk about it. Say, are you okay? What's bothering you? And fix the problem before you go back in the room. And again, I think the flood thing, the flood terminology she's using in this video is totally unnecessary if you take scripture's advice and don't let the sun go down in your anger. Don't let time pass when you're angry without you solving the problem. Okay. So let's continue.
How do I cope with someone who has terrible road rage and they're driving and I'm the passenger?
If you're driving with a partner who has terrible road rage and you're in the car with them, what do you do then? Well, here's something that you can do. If you can, ask your partner to please pull over to the side of the road, get off the road, and then say to your partner, I'm scared of how you are expressing yourself about the drivers on the road. Would you mind if I drove? Because that would help me get over my fear.
I feel super convicted here, not because I have super bad road rage, but I do get annoyed with people and stressed out and I'll say things like, "What is that guy doing? Like people are actually crazy." I'll say stuff like that on the road. And my tone is not great. I'm not screaming at them, but my tone is not good. And that decreases my wife's it bothers her, it lowers her mood, all that. And she's kind of in the unfortunate position of I just feel awful for this as a husband because she can't ask me to let her drive. And I don't even think that would fix the problem because I would get just as bothered by people's behavior even if I wasn't driving. But because my wife has a condition called RP, and it would be unsafe for her to drive on the road. And retinitis pigmentosa, it's like a vision condition. She can't legally, her eyes are not at the point where she could legally drive, and so she doesn't have the choice to try to get me out of that situation so that she feels safer. That's just she just basically has to deal with the bad feelings that I give her in that moment, and I feel awful for that. So I've got to figure out how to solve that. And again, not that I'm screaming at people or anything. I'm not that kind of, not that I'm driving. I would never drive dangerously, but my attitude towards other people would not be Christ-like. I would be like, sometimes I'm just super annoyed, and that decreases her mood. And so, yeah, I think you just need to, I think what she said is great though. Like just telling your partner what you're feeling instead of what they're doing. Danny Silk would say, "You tell me about you, and I'll tell you about me," instead of you telling me about me. He says that never goes well. If you tell me about me, that never goes well. If you tell me about you, that goes somewhere really good. And I think that's really true because the Bible talks about self-control. What's the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. You're not controlling your partner. You don't control your partner. You don't say, "You are doing this, and you need to stop doing this, and you suck, and you are bad, and you make my life miserable, and you," all this crap. That's not how you solve a problem. That makes the problem worse. That's not self-control. That's other person control. That's called manipulation, which the Bible does not have good words for. I'll let you look them up yourself. But self-control is Danny Silk has a really great thing. He says, "You control you on a good day." Sometimes you don't even control yourself very well. But so trying to control your partner is just overstepping your bounds. Jesus said it like this: before you examine the speck of dust in your brother's eye, maybe take the plank out of your own. And I think that's always a great way to attitude to come to a problem with. Like, just telling your partner how you are impacted and experiencing him or her. So not like, "You suck at driving, you have road rage, you're a terrible person, I hate," or you make me hate you," or something like that. That's all terrible. You should say, "I feel unsafe," or "I feel scared," or "I feel nervous," or "I feel saddened and disheartened" when you treat people that way with your words. And man, if I'm just my wife's never said that to me, but I know that's how she's feeling inside. And if she ever said that to me, that would just cut me to my absolute soul, because I have now ruined the experience in the car of the most precious creation God has made, and I've treated people unkindly in the process. Like that would just destroy me. And that would produce way more change than if she said, something like, "You have anger management issues," or something like, I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with an example. Like, I think the way Julie phrased that was really good. Just tell them how you're experiencing the situation. Just tell your partner how you're experiencing the situation. So if they're bothering you, don't talk about the things that therapists will say it like this. They'll say, "Use I first language, not you first language." So always start your sentence with I instead of you. That's what therapists will say. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, biblical truth. Like, again, self-control, not other person control. And so, yeah, I think that's really good. Let's do the next video though that I wanted to review with you today. It's talking about turning toward your partner, and this is something that my wife is exceptional at. And in the story I gave you before about that problem we had at Christmas time, how we solved that. She is so good at I can honestly tell you, I've been married now for almost 2.5 years or something like that. 3 years in July. And there has not been a single day that my wife has remained angry at me for over like, I hesitate to give you exact numbers because I don't want to lie, but she solves problems fast. She turns towards me fast. She doesn't turn away from me for elongated periods of time. And I think we're honestly both good at this, and that's why it can be good, but she sometimes does let me take the initiative. Like, she won't be the first person to fix the problem, but she never holds a grudge and refuses to fix a problem and remains in unforgiveness or something like that. Like, she's always turning back towards me and towards our connection. And John Gottman is going to talk in this video about what that does for your marriage in small moments. He talks about these moments where your partner is needing attention or a problem solved or time spent with you, or your connection reinforced, and they are inviting you through subtle conversation cues and moments to connect. And how you respond in those moments determines the likelihood, is one of the biggest things that determines indicates whether or not your marriage will go the distance. Listen to this video. It's really beautiful.
Bird theory. What are bids for connection and what is turning toward, John?
Well, it came out of our apartment laboratory, came to be called the Love Lab. And, we had 12 hours of video of a couple, a newlywed couple, and we had it for 130 couples. So mostly nothing happens on these videos. And, and we were sitting there looking at these videos where almost nothing happens and thinking, we just wasted years of our lives. And there were these moments when one person kind of turned to the other and really try to get their partner's attention or interest.
Yep.
And often the response was, no, I'm not interested in you. I'm not available. Leave me alone.
Sheesh.
Stop bothering me. Stop annoying me. I'm in my bubble and you're bursting it. And many times the opposite was the case. They would say, oh, that's great. Yeah, tell me about what you're thinking. And that is pretty funny what you talked about. Or, yeah, look, there is a bird out there. That's interesting. And it turned out that those moments were so predictive of the future of the relationship. It was amazing. So 17 couples had divorced 6 years after we started this newlywed study. When we look back 6 years earlier, their percent turning toward their partner's bids was 33%.
Sheesh.
The ones who were still married when we look back 6 years earlier, their proportion of turning toward was 86%.
Look at that difference, dude. He said, what, 33 to 86? That difference was, like, the couples who were still married, 86% of the time turned toward their partner in those moments of invitation. And then the couples who weren't married, I think he said it was 30-something% of the time turned towards their partner instead of away. Man, I think that's huge. And that's so profound. And that's something you can change. It's just a micro habit that you can do. Like, something I'm determined to do in my marriage, and you can copy this as well, because I'm copying it from John Gottman, is that anytime my wife offers me one of these moments, anytime she offers me the chance to turn toward her rather than away from her and give her attention and affection and reinforce our connection, I am in the moral wrong should I choose to decline that opportunity. If I turn away from her in that moment when she extends that invitation, it is morally reprehensible for me to turn away. So if I'm editing a podcast, playing a video game, working on the car, working at work at Rock Hill, doing a boys' night, going to the store to get food, whatever I'm doing, if she extends a hand of invitation to me in that moment, it is my job. It is my God-given job to respond favorably and give her what she's looking for. My wife comes first. That has to be the foundation, okay? And you can say, well, your wife shouldn't be bothering you when you're at work. She shouldn't be bothering you when you're doing that individualistic, stuff that you're doing. And I would just say, like, what matters more to you? What matters more to you? Does your wife's needs matter more to you? Or do the other things that you spend your time on in your life matter more to you? And if you want a good marriage, man, you have to answer my wife's needs. You have to answer that. You have no choice. And so I would just encourage you guys. A lot of the car fights that happen are because instead of turning towards each other, partners practice turning away from each other and prolonging the amount of time disconnection is present in a marriage, and anger is present in a marriage, and sadness is present in a marriage. Minimize that time. Slay the dragon in its lair before it comes to your village. Okay? Address your problems before they address you. Don't let the sun go down in your anger. Solve things today. Don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. All of that truth is profound in not just solving these moments of crisis, these arguments in the car, but preventing them from happening entirely, guys. And I'm just super passionate about this because it really works. It really works. If you solve, because the problems are going to happen. I'm not saying you're going to live a marriage without problems, but what I'm saying is you can live a marriage where problems have zero presence of time in your life because you solve them as soon as they happen. Okay? And that is a beautiful, beautiful way to live and spend your time serving your wife. So really, really good. Let's continue to listen to this for just a few minutes and then I'll wrap this episode up.
So 86% versus 33%, that's a huge difference, right? And these small moments that seem so insignificant turn out to have an enormous amount of power. One of my brilliant graduate students, Janny Driver, discovered was that when people turn toward at a high level, they automatically have a sense of humor about themselves when they're disagreeing. And that is magic. That is gold. If you can laugh at yourself, even when you're disagreeing, you have a way of coming together, even when you disagree, and really enjoying humor and enjoying that sense of being together, but also it reduces physiological arousal and allows you to really delay responding quickly and aggressively or defensively. It allows you to respond with some care, with some thought. Delay is universally the way to engage the frontal cortex. So you're not responding automatically with defensiveness or aggression. You're actually being thoughtful about what your partner is asking for. So the
I do want to clarify delay there. I don't think what he means is postpone your reaction for 5 hours, but rather 5 seconds. Okay. I think that's an important clarification and distinction because again, I do think it's important to think before you speak. Obviously, you don't want to say something that's going to make the situation better or, worse than better, but you don't want to prolong the time that this problem is present either. So there's this balance, like don't talk until you can say something good, but by golly, you better be working to say something good instead of just putting it off and taking space and procrastinating and leaving the problem to fester because that's how you're going to end up with, a bigger problem than it ever was. And so I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I found this super interesting and compelling. I will include the links to these videos in the show notes if you would like to check them out for yourself. Tell me what you thought of this episode. Not only what I said, but the scripture we went through, as well as John Gottman and Julie Gottman's words. Would really love to hear your thoughts on them. And I'm looking to have somebody as a permanent co-host on this show. So if you find that to be something you're interested in doing, talking about, God's vision of marriage, presenting marriage as a good thing, equipping the younger generation to get married, talking about how more people need to be getting married and the good things it can do for your life, reach out to me. Let me know you'd love to do it with me. I record on Saturdays every week. And then obviously there would be no editing or anything involved on your end. You just have to talk with me for, you don't have to. It'd just be if you wanted to for, probably like 40 minutes, an hour or so every week. Would love to do that with you. Thank you guys so much for listening, though. Again, I would love to hear your comments through the YouTube comments, or you can give me the show, the Restoring Rapport podcast, a private message through Instagram and Facebook. Would love to hear from you. It would make me feel super connected to you as audience members, and it would make this podcasting system two-way. Thank you so much for listening today. God bless you. I'm going to start this segment where I give you a marriage challenge to do throughout the week. And your marriage challenge this week is going to be, I want you to do a 60-second kiss with your partner this week. Starting today. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Do it today. 60-second kiss with your partner this week. If you don't have a partner, find one. And I know that's hard, and I've talked about that other places. But if you don't have a partner, you're looking, find one, man, because it is not good that man should be alone. And so, in all likelihood, some men are designed, as I've said before, Jesus, Paul. Some men are designed to be single, but it's not many. So, go with God. Godspeed. God bless you, and I will talk to you guys next time.